Do these people even watch the movies they review? I've covered extensively how the majority of the reviews for Elio either misunderstood the film or just straight up don't even review it. But I saw a new review last week and I just have to talk about it. This creator has a sizable following on YouTube, and while he usually makes video essays and discussions about cinema, which I generally like, he also puts out videos quarterly doing quick reviews of new releases from the previous 3 months. And the less than 2 minutes of that video that was his review of Elio perfectly sums up the problems with the discourse around this film.
Speaking of keeping two people away from each other, that was exactly Disney's thinking when they removed director Adrian Molina from the production of Elio.
Alright, so off to a bad start by calling it Elio. I'm in the same camp as my buddy Troy, who says that if you call it Elio, then we're very skeptical that you ever watched the film, because they say the name Elio 36 times in the film. It's really not that hard. But part of me thinks he might be doing it on purpose, because later in the video he calls it
K-pop Demon Slayers and the nice guys too.
He then goes on to talk about the troubled production of Elio. Most of what he said are like half-truths because the media sensationalized a lot of what actually happened. But the point here is that half of his review to the second is him talking about the previous version of the film. And that's a reasonable thing to talk about if you were doing a full discussion of the film. But he only devotes 50 seconds to discussing the actual film that was released, and instead focused most of his time on commentating on information that exclusively came from that one Hollywood Reporter article. This especially annoys me because he clearly didn't research the production of any of the other films that he reviews in this video, because he goes on a short rant about the CGI baby in Fantastic Four First Steps and how ugly it is and how he would have done it differently, even though you literally have to look at a cast list to learn that it's a real baby. And there was plenty of material given to the press around the film's release showing the baby on set. And he commended Sony Animation for the smart move of putting K-pop Demon Hunters on Netflix. Even though if he did any research on the distribution of that film, he would know that Sony lost at minimum $80 million in that distribution deal. So the fact that so much of his review of Elio was about the troubled production, but none of his other reviews talk about the production, to me proves that he was just trying to find reasons to hate Elio. That, or he fell victim to the media smear campaign against it. Anyway, moving on.
Disney then decided to hand the film off to directing team Madeline Sherifane and Dominic Sheet, who were given the task of making the movie about absolutely nothing. Some can whine about Disney becoming too involved in the modern-day culture war, but a movie with something to say, whether you agree with it or not, will always be preferable to me than an empty corporate shell. Elio became just that, a movie about nothing.
So you can imagine why that pissed me off. I get it if you didn't connect with Elio, or you didn't find it emotional or engaging, or if you were just bored. Like, I get it. But to say with confidence multiple times that the film was about nothing shows major incompetence in media analysis. The first 20 minutes of the film established the themes of grief and loneliness pretty blatantly. Elio wants to escape Earth and join the Communiverse because he's lonely after his parents died. I've met autistic 10-year-olds who understood that. But that's not just an inciting incident. Loneliness as a theme propels Elio's motivation throughout the film. And that's just one of many of the messages in the film. It also touches on family relationships, trauma responses, coping with grief, autism, friendship. Some have even compared Glorden's arc to coming out. So, like, some of those queer themes are still there. So, like, if you truly felt that there was absolutely nothing to gain from this film, then you must have slept through it. And I'd hardly call a film that is a love letter to sci-fi movies and was clearly made with a ton of love and care a empty corporate shell.
The concept is actually interesting, about a boy who gets mistaken as the ruler of Earth and becomes the ambassador for the planet. That's an interesting concept, but it fails to go anywhere interesting with it.
Okay, so whether or not something is interesting is completely subjective, but he says that the film goes nowhere with the central concept. But I mean, that concept is how Elio meets Glorden, who this guy clearly likes, and Glorden plays a big role in Elio's arc of learning that he's capable of friendship. This concept also leads to the B-plot with Elio's clone, and who acts as an idyllic version of Elio and is what he thinks Olga wants, but he later discovers is not. And this concept leads to the liar revealed trope, the same trope that was used in K-pop Demon Hunters, I might add, which is what leads to many of the emotional moments in the film. So again, whether or not you find that interesting is subjective, but you can't say that there wasn't more depth to that story.
Except for maybe in the ending, which again, for the second time this year, sends this head-scratchingly bad message. In Lilo and Stitch, they fumbled the ball by having the older guardian give up her responsibilities to chase her dreams. This film does the exact opposite by having the young child give up his dreams and choosing obligation to his guardian. Now, call me a hypocrite if you want,
I'm going
but
to.
why is it in these new Disney films that the parents are supposed to be the children and the children are forced to be the adults?
Wow, so many things wrong there. I don't need to call you a hypocrite because you preemptively called yourself out, but I genuinely don't understand what you're trying to say here, because if you're saying that Elio should have abandoned his only remaining family to live out his dreams, then you're saying you want him to make the same mistake that Lilo & Stitch 2025 made? Like, what are you saying? Well, first of all, he's not abandoning his dreams. He literally says,
"This isn't goodbye. It's just not yet."
And the reason he says that is because the events of the film lead him to realize that he needs to give Earth another chance. Elio wanted to escape Earth because of a false reality that he had built in his head. He feels nobody wants him and that he's a burden to his aunt-turned-guardian. And he's unable to make friends because he self-isolates as a trauma response after his parents' death, and also because he's on the spectrum. But then he learns how to make connections with Gordon and later Bryce. He discovers that Olga does want him in her life because he's all she has left of her brother. And he learned to work together with the Masters of Ham, which gave him a sense of community and proved that he is not alone.
You're gonna be okay. You're not alone.
Again, the theme about loneliness is not subtle. So Elio is not choosing to stay on Earth out of obligation, but because he realized Earth actually wasn't the problem, it was his perspective that needed to change. Honestly, I think it would be a much worse message if he just ran away from his problems that were built on false presumptions. The Elio's choice is a perfectly logical conclusion to his arc if you're paying any kind of attention. And if this review wasn't bad already, he punctuates it with,
"Somehow, give me a time machine and take me back to the days of Finding Nemo, please."
which made me laugh because I noticed when Elio came out that I couldn't find a single review in print publications or from any content creator that did not at some point bring up the Pixar films from the 2000s and how Pixar's newer films don't live up to Pixar's golden age, and just kept going on and making these comparisons. I couldn't find a single review that didn't bring up old Pixar films. And this guy was so close to breaking that streak, but no, he had to bring it up. He had to put that in the end. Now look, obviously I'm tearing apart this one guy's review, but his is just one example, which is why I'm not mentioning the creator by name, because that's not really important. His is just a stand-in for the dozens of reviews of Elio like it that focus more on the production troubles and the previous version of the film than on the film itself, that seem to miss the pretty blatant themes throughout the film, that criticize the ending because they weren't paying attention to how the character arc was unfolding, and who just default to comparing it to Pixar's older films. This guy's review is not unique at all. I've seen very few reviews of Elio, negative, positive, or neutral, that actually review the film for what it is. And you might be wondering, why is this important? Why do I care so much? Well, it's because I really liked Elio and I think it's a good film. And because it didn't do great at the box office, most people's first exposure to it were these content creators who were misrepresenting what the film actually was, or from the sensationalist media who are more concerned about you clicking on their article than you actually enjoying entertainment. And so I'd hate for a film that's as good and as beautiful as Elio to be thrown into obscurity because a hive mind of people decided that it's something that it's not. And this is rude. And the same thing can be said for any film or piece of media. I just like to spread positivity, and I think this is a good movie, and I want more people to see it, which is why I make videos like this.